Hi, it's Josh Rubin with the Rubin team. Let's go take a look. All right, everybody, it's Josh Rubin here with the Rubin special. Today is Thursday, March 28th at noon here in New York. We're joined by none other than Alison Alston, star broker from Charlotte, North Carolina. Alison, what's going on down there today in Charlotte?
Well, it is beautiful here in Charlotte today. We are sun shining, 70s. We're very happy. Finally, the rain stopped.
Amazing. So, what they say, what is it? April showers bring May flowers, but here we are, not quite April yet, but I would imagine down in Charlotte, you're probably getting some more April-like weather than we are here in New York.
Yeah, and our flowers started in February towards the end, so we're rolling already there. We've got all of our pollen out, everybody's allergies are kicking up. It's that time of the year, but usually by the mid of April, it's all done and we're into glorious summer, as I say.
Well, I think that's one of the great attractions of the wonderful state of North Carolina is that the weather tends to be a little bit more cooperative. And,
yes,
that's why a lot of people end up there in one way, shape, or form, isn't it?
Yes, I'm actually from New Jersey originally myself. Spent a lot of time in Manhattan with my first career. And then my husband and I relocated from Greenwich, Connecticut down here. And exactly for that, we were just done with the weather. I was not digging my car out in the snow one more time.
Yeah, well, that's a great example of a lot of people's experience here in the Northeast, and they wind up down there in North and South Carolina.
Yes.
You being from New Jersey and then having lived up in Greenwich, like you said, you got sick of the snow, right?
Yeah, yeah. The snow, the grind, life's different down here in a really happy way. Obviously, the weather it helps, right? When it's more sunny, it's warmer, you have a lot more days outside, but the pace is definitely different from the grind in Manhattan. I think it's one of the things that's helped me be so successful is I'm still used to running at the Manhattan pace. I've never quite adjusted to that.
Yep.
But everyone else is moving a little slower. So it's like you get up, you get your day going, you get it done, and you're still able to wrap up at a reasonable hour and go enjoy your life. So that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how long have you been down in the Charlotte area?
So we've been here almost 9 years at this point.
Cool. And what was it that originally brought you down there?
So interestingly enough, so I used to do fundraising. I was a director of development for independent schools in the Northeast, and I had a job offer to be a director at the foundation at UVA. My husband and I went to Charlottesville, had a wonderful visit. Gene Shutt, who's the president of the university there, was just, phenomenal guy. Great opportunity. I was also a newlywed and had been married about 6 months. And I looked at my husband and I said, if I take this job, I'm going to be on the road 6 to 7 days a week. And I don't think I want that. But at the same time, I didn't really want to keep doing exactly what I'd been doing for another 40 years. Yeah. And so we kind of looked at each other and we said, well, what are we going to do? And so I made the decision that I wanted to go into real estate at that point. And he was a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch. And so we looked at where can we transfer that's in a warmer location and will give me the opportunity to really be able to afford to start over and go back to one income for a while. And so Charlotte was where we settled on, and we absolutely love it.
Very cool. Yeah, as a financial advisor, you can really do what you do from wherever you have an internet connection and a phone, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and Bank of America obviously is a huge presence here in Charlotte, so there were plenty of Merrill offices. He no longer is a financial advisor, but still works for Bank of America. So it was a very easy transition for him to be able to make and to allow me to go ahead and start a brand new career.
Yeah. And what were some of the sort of speed bumps that you ran into in those early days of your career down in Charlotte?
I would say number one was I didn't know a single person other than my husband. So I had to build a sphere from scratch down here. Number two is becoming an area expert when I've just moved here. I spent the first few months that we lived here, literally every morning I'd get up, get in my car and go drive a neighborhood in circles until I could tell you every single fact about that neighborhood. Average price point, number of beds and baths that you would get, the school assignments, proximity to uptown. I would just neurotically study these areas, the type of architecture. And so I had to learn everything brand new. So I would say that was a big one. And then obviously learning how to sell real estate, because it is a very different process here than it is in the Northeast. I'd been involved with it. My dad, he's now retired, but he was a custom home builder in New Jersey. And so we'd grown up flipping houses. And so I knew that process inside and out there, but it's completely different here.
Yeah, so it was almost like you were genetically predisposed to the business in a way, because you sort of grew up in it with your dad as a custom builder in South Jersey, was it?
Yes. Yep. They live in Long Beach Island full time.
Oh, so you kind of grew up in LBI.
Well, I grew up in a small town called Bordentown on the other side of the state, but we would always go summer there. And then my parents moved there full time when I went to college. I'm the youngest. So they were like, we're done getting out and going.
Yeah. Yeah. So was your dad's business based more in the Bordentown area or more in LBI?
He did a lot in the Princeton and Hopewell area, and then eventually transitioned fully to LBI.
Cool. Of course, LBI is where Taylor Swift's friend Jack, his last name escapes me.
Yeah.
I think that's where he's from, and he got married, and Taylor was the talk of the town. Was it last summer? I think she was there.
Yes, we were joking. They went to the Black Whale, which is one of our favorite happy hour places, and we're like, oh, it's going to be ruined now. But thankfully, not too many tourists have followed, so we're good.
Yeah. So that's interesting, though, because in just the last 9 years, you have gone from literally 0 to 100, where you were ranked, forgive me if I'm wrong, but you were ranked number 2 in the state for
number 1, actually.
Number 1 in the state for sides, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, I mean, is it just you? I mean, tell us a little bit about sort of the back end of your operation.
So I have an incredible team that I run, Lodestone Real Estate. And I have a woman, Jess, who I joke, but she is literally the right half of me. The two of us do everything together, and there's no way that I would have been able to hit those numbers without her help. You know, I have an incredible group of women that I work with, and they're the reason that I get excited to come to work every day. I truly, truly enjoy working with each of them and seeing them grow and seeing them succeed. So that's been a big driving factor for me. You know, I joined the team as an agent and was an agent on the team and had an incredible mentor and coach to start off. So I think that also played a pivotal role in how that worked for me and getting going. You know, Marissa was really, really good at pushing me to reach pretty high levels of success quickly. You know, her and I had a conversation 2 years in, and she was pivoting to running a coaching program and didn't want to run the team anymore. And so I ended up purchasing the team from her right around 2.5 years into the business. And I've been running it ever since. And so I think the pressure that came from that impacted me in a positive way, because the team was doing just shy of 50 million when I took it over. And I think a lot of people in the area thought the two of us were crazy, especially her handing over a $50 million business to someone who has 2.5 years of experience. But the quickest way to get me to succeed is to tell me no. If you don't believe in me, I'm like,
let's be fair here, though, Allison. Mm-hmm. You had 2.5 years of experience in brokerage.
Yep.
Right. But you had, I'm going to guess, 20 years worth of experience in development?
Oh, about 10 years. So I was still in I will be 40 next week. So I was still
thinking, you know, you get out of school, you do that, but the 9 years, 9 years of, you know, of experience in real estate certainly has helped you evolve. But my point was that you were a business person before you joined the team.
Absolutely.
Right. So you had this incredible business acumen, and you grew up in business, watching your dad, and I'm sure, you know, your family sort of ran that business. So this isn't this isn't your typical person with 2
No.
years experience out of school.
Exactly. And that was kind of the point, right? Is she saw that, she recognized that, but most people didn't bother to ask those questions. And so people wanted me to fail. And so that just pushed me when I was like, well, I'm not going to, it's not an option. Right. So let's go after this and let's go get it.
But it was almost like you were a stealth broker in a way,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Because
which is
here
what I
you're
love.
coming in with this intelligence and this incredible experience. And so it's really just a question of, it's like, you remember when you were little and there were those TVs with the antennas and the channels that you had to click, right?
Exactly.
So here you are, a top shelf TV, and all you really have to do is just click and you can dial it in.
Exactly. Yep.
Right. So, but that's remarkable because you had this opportunity. You happened to be it's a combination of the right place at the right time.
Absolutely.
And you saw this opportunity with this business that was clearly on a solid foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that your husband was a part of it, right? In terms of.
No, this was all mine. My husband's been an incredible partner and he's very supportive. But from day one, he's like, this is your choice. This is your business. If this is what you want to do, you go do it. And I'm going to do what I can to support that. But he's like, I do not.
But I'm going to consult Kathy, my wife, on these business decisions, right?
Yeah, I do a little bit. Certainly the financial aspect of it. Obviously, that's his background. But when it comes to more of how I'm running the team and those kinds of things,
the day to day, really, I'm saying in terms of like the idea of taking over the business, right? You're not just going to switch hats one day and do it.
Yes, no, we definitely had a conversation about it. But again, my husband, how we've always operated is he focuses and stays in his lane and I stay in mine, and we're there to support each other. And we trust each other and love each other enough to know that if the other one thinks this is a great idea, then we're going to be behind it and support it, whether we understand it or not.
That's great. Have you spoken at all with there's a friend of mine in Boston. Her name is Lisa Chinati.
I have not, but it sounds like
I definitely want to connect you guys because it's a similar path, and I think she's just a few years ahead running her business, but she's built out a remarkable team up in Boston where she is just absolutely killing it. But she kind of went, similar experience, went from 0 to 100. And Lisa's a fantastic person and a great resource. So that would be a good person to connect with. But tell us some of the hurdles. I mean, obviously you had the people who sort of painted a target on your back and felt like you were doomed for failure when you took over the business. But what were some other sort of unexpected challenges that you ran into there?
I would say probably the biggest one for me was figuring out who to hire. Because I had this vision of who I wanted, and I didn't have the track record to be able to command those people to start with. And it also, for me, the culture has become so much more important, the personalities. I worked with some incredible people in my first career. I also worked with some people that I did not want to work with. And so I swore to myself that when I started this team, I would only work with people I wanted to work with. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to be the number one producer. It doesn't mean that that's their path. And so that kind of took some time for me to adjust into and stop questioning myself on. I would say the other big obstacle for me was just figuring out, okay, well, how do I continue to manage my own personal business? Because I need the sales to be able to support the rest of the company while still producing enough to create some opportunities for the other agents on my team, and having the time to coach them and get them going. So those are probably the two biggest hurdles I faced in the beginning.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, assembling the right team is absolutely critical to our success. And I credit a lot of my success to Lindsay Kurtz, right? And it took me a lot of false starts in hiring different people along the way to figure out who was going to be a good fit for not only the business and the skills that were required to complete the roles and responsibilities involved in that respective position, but also, and more importantly, someone who is compatible with me and sort of knows how I think and feel about certain things. Lindsay and I just had a meeting this morning where she was on a coaching call with Janet Miller from the Tom Ferry organization earlier this week, and Janet was making some suggestions and different things to implement. And she said, well, you got to understand how Josh thinks. Josh is not going to want to do that. He might say he'll do it, and then he just won't do it. So, she just kind of knows how I think about certain things, and saves a lot of time and aggravation. And she helps me like as a sounding board with different ideas and so I can understand and relate to what you're saying about having people like Jess and the other members of your team. Now, was Jess a part of the team when you came on board, or did you bring her on board after the sort of the acquisition of the team?
So I actually met Jess. She used to work with one of my business partners' wives. And so they worked together as vet techs at a veterinary clinic. And so we had been introduced, we had become friends. And, when I was taking over the team, I was talking with this woman, Stacy, and I was like, I feel like I really need an assistant at this point to help me kind of manage my own business and start managing other people and getting this stuff settled. And I'm just not really sure where to start and how to get going again, right? We talked about that hiring and that being the hardest part at first. And Stacey was like, well, Jess would be perfect for this. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. But I also know she's getting paid a salary and benefits and all these things that I don't know that I can offer the same thing right now. And she was like, well, I don't think she's really happy at her job. I think she's kind of feeling like she's hitting a wall. And she's like, Jess is a constant learner like you. So she's like, I would just reach out and talk to her. And so I sat down with Jess, and thank goodness she agreed, because I don't think I could have ever gotten here without her help. But I just told her, listen, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I can guarantee you I'm going to give it everything I've got. And here's what I can offer you. And as we grow and hit these other milestones, then I can give you more. But this is what it's going to look like. And so she came over about 4 or 5 months after I took over the team. And she was my assistant for a few years to start. And I mean, the two of us literally used to spend the day. She would drive me to my appointments. She'd be on emails while I'd be in showing the house. I'd come out. She'd be like, here's your phone. You've got to call this person before we get to the next house. Go. And we would just do this all day, every day. And then eventually got to the point where obviously we expanded the team out. I was able to start handing over leads to the agents. And Jess and I still work all of my clients together, but she also runs other businesses for me at this point.
And so what are some of the other businesses that you're running?
So I also run iagentoffer.com. It is a completely off-market version of the business. When Open Door came into the environment, a lot of people are like, oh, this is going to be the next big disruptor. Yeah, absolutely. Right. I love disruptors because they create opportunities. And so one of the opportunities that some colleagues of mine saw was we've got to create a option that allows the agent to stay in the transaction. So if a seller sends in their property and wants a cash offer from one of our investors, they have to have a licensed agent to represent them. We will not work directly with the seller. And so that's something that was a conversation with the investors. We've expanded quite a bit with the number of investors that we serve. And it was, hey, we're keeping the professionals in this because they actually know what they're doing. And we want to work with someone who has the values, the integrity, the know-how to get us through this. And you know exactly what you're getting, right? We want an actual property disclosure filled out the way it's supposed to be filled out, not me sending a piece of paperwork over and saying, okay, here's what you're supposed to do. Please do that. Right? I want to make sure they have their own guidance. I also, on the other hand, want to make sure that that seller knows what they're getting into, because I don't personally practice dual agency. It's just a personal decision that I've made. And so I want to make sure they know exactly what they're doing. and they understand here's what market value is. Here's what happens if you take this on the MLS and go public, right? Here's kind of the offers you're going to get from the investors. These are the pros and the cons of these different opportunities. So we want to make sure that they're really clearly aware of what they're doing and why.
Yeah, it's remarkable. You saw an opportunity to pivot and you did just that, where, you went and said, hey, investors, you want opportunity, and you just connected them. And so that's pretty remarkable. Speaking of which, with, the recent settlement from the National Association of Realtors for $418 million, it's sort of, everybody knew what was happening, generally speaking, big picture, since the original jury verdict a couple months ago. But I don't think that anyone really expected or anticipated the National Association of Realtors to settle like they did. What's your take on it, and what do you think is going to happen in our business?
Yeah. Again, I think, if you look at industries as a whole, real estate really hasn't changed much since its inception. So I think we're due for another disruption, and I think this is certainly going to be it. I think there will be a lot of incredible opportunities that come out of this for realtors who are willing to take the time, study, pivot, right, adapt. I think ultimately it is a huge disappointment to me that it's being spun as an opportunity to create affordable housing. We have a huge need for that in our country, and this just made it more costly for buyers to purchase a home. So there's news bites that are going out there that say, the prices are going to come down, et cetera. I'm like, no, realtors actually don't set the price, right? The market does, and it's not suddenly going to correct and drop down to cover our commission. That's not how it works. I think there's going to be a lot of changes. I don't necessarily see this first round, if the proposed settlement actually gets accepted as is, I don't see that as creating a ton of change right now, at least in the Charlotte market, because of our lack of inventory here. What I think is the repercussions that come out of that, and when people more clearly understand what this actually means, I think that's when we'll start to see some of those changes happen that should be. I 100% believe there should be a lot more transparency about realtor commissions on both sides. I think the public should be well aware of all of the different financial aspects of a property. And who's actually paying for what. I think that's really important. I think,
I think that consumers are very focused on the top line, which is, understandable because that's their cost. But if I show up at your house to sell it, and in a normal market, I'm not talking about the type of market that we've seen the last couple of years. It's been sort of overheated, lack of inventory, but
crazy.
A market where there's equilibrium, where, New York City, for better or for worse, has been a market that has largely been one of equilibrium because we were at the heart of the pandemic. So we never saw that, flood of buyer interest. We did see a flood of inventory. In fact, inventory breached like a 10-year high in the third and fourth quarter of 2020 because no one was here and everybody wanted to leave. So
they were all coming to us.
I was very busy, which was a good thing from that perspective. But since then, we've been sort of equally weighted in terms of buyer interest and inventory. And we just, my point is that you can work on these listings. I mean, I had a listing that, I've had a number of listings that have taken 6 or more months to sell. And of course, the typical agreement goes for 6 months. So some of those we've had to get extensions on, which is fine. I mean, we have good relationships with people. My point is that when you actually measure the time and effort put into some of these sales, the perceived 6% winds up being, it's not as much as the consumer thinks. And so, sure, if you get 6%, you sell a house in a weekend, it seems like a lot of money. But really, what you're doing is you're paying 6% for the advice of an expert, the guidance and the representation. And if you tried to do that alone or tried to give it to somebody who's just going to charge you 1, 2, or 3% and not send it out to the brokerage community, you probably would have gotten 5 or 10 and maybe more % less in your final sales price. So you really have to think about it objectively.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you the last time that I met someone who didn't appreciate all the effort that people like you put into the process of selling a house at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
And it is, right? And that's one of the things I've been sharing with some of the agents is look, it's about your value. And as long as you continue to bring value to that relationship, they're going to continue to work with you. If you're not bringing value to it, then that's where, yeah, you should be nervous right now. Right. But it's like, I know how much we go above and beyond for our clients. I mean, I pay for a full time concierge who helps with all of their lifestyle needs outside of the house on all of our transactions, regardless of if you're the buyer or the seller. We do everything we can to make sure it is a smooth and easy process and transition for our clients. And we see that, right? In our reviews, we have hundreds of 5-star reviews because they know how hard we're working for them, right? We have a seller coming up right now, and it's funny because they were asking about this. And we said, honestly, we think it's good. And they're like, yeah, because you guys are going to be just fine. And I said, well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate you reaffirming my beliefs. But, we also have always been transparent with our clients. This is how much it actually costs us to go ahead and prepare your house for the market. And there is zero guarantee we're getting that money back. And I think
Yeah.
that's also something that's important is just, again, that transparency. I think the more that you share with them what you're doing, and we get a lot of, we'll say critics that are like, well, you're in Charlotte, you put a sign in the yard and it's sold. Yes. And it can sell for a lot more. There's a reason our market has continued to appreciate because we choose to invest in making sure we're marketing to every possible buyer because the more we bring, the more that's going to bring that up.
And the roots of that sign in that yard go deep throughout the community, not just over the last 10 years, but also all the other people that are on your team that are a part of the community. So
exactly.
It's just like a tree that you see and you say, oh yes, that tree is beautiful, but what went into the tree?
Right. How did we get there? Yeah. It's like a lot of times agents like, oh, well, I it's easy for you to say you just had X in sales and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. And let me tell you what it took for me to get here. Right. I used to do 4 open houses a weekend, every single weekend. I didn't take vacation for 5 years. Do not recommend, by the way, not a smart decision. However, right, that's how driven I was. And that's how hellbent I was that I was going to succeed. So I was like, I am giving this everything. And I'm like, yeah, if you want to do that, chances are you will be like me. Right. But it's like, all right, at what cost? Right. You've got to figure out that balance.
So how many people are on the team now?
There's 10 of us right now.
And are you essentially an independent brokerage?
No, we're actually with eXp Realty. So we came over here. We just hit our 2 years in March. We were with a smaller boutique brokerage and sat down and spent about a year. I think everyone was like, make a decision, Allison. But I spent about a year. I went around, I interviewed the other brokerages. I knew we wanted to be, we needed something different. We were ready for that next step. What I couldn't decide on was, did I want to just go ahead and open my own brokerage, which interestingly enough is how Lodestone started. It was an independent brokerage when it started. And for the first 3 years it was. Or did I want to be part of a bigger global company? And ultimately, I consulted with a few of my friends who'd gone out on their own and then come back in and talked about the pros and cons, ran some of the numbers on it. A big thing for me was I wanted to be able to provide healthcare for my agents. I have a lot of younger agents now that I've had more success in the business. I've chosen to kind of work with some younger agents that are just getting started that have that potential. And none of them have healthcare. And I'm like, you are one bad accident away from ruining your life. And
it's funny you mentioned
huge.
that. I have a friend of mine who is a beautiful young woman. She's an agent at Serhant now.
Uh-huh.
And she got the flu, and she said, "Oh, I never get sick." And da 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 da. And I said, "Well, why don't you take some Theraflu and feel a little bit better?" And she said, "Oh, I can't even get out of bed." I offered to bring her Theraflu from the public. She said, "Oh, I don't want you to do that. Don't worry." So she's from England, and she said, "Oh, if you know," I said, I'm shocked. You've been here all these years. I've known you for all this time, and you don't have health insurance." She said, "Well, it's so expensive. Call it $500, $1,000 a month for an individual coverage." And she said, "Yeah, my theory is that if I ever get so sick, or I need surgery or something like that, then I would just fly home to get it done because the health care is free." So for basically the cost of a ticket, call it, I don't know,
Right.
$500,
She's got her
$1,000,
solution.
she would fly home. But I said,
Yeah.
well, what if you can't fly? What if you get
Right. You literally
hit by a
can't get
car,
out of bed
like
to go to
catastrophic?
therapy.
You
Yeah.
need something done. So you're right. There are a lot of these young people around. I mean, obviously her perspective is a little different because she grew
Yes.
up in the UK. That doesn't make it right. You still need health insurance for where you are. And one of the things that I do a lot is I travel. I like to bring my kids and show them different places around the world and have experiences. But
Right.
if it's great, but if something happens, I always think in the back of my head, like, what if we slip and fall? What if we break something? Then what happens? And how are we covered? And it's all these wacky things that go on. And the almost 50-year-old version of myself, whereas the 25 version of myself is like,
Invincible.
It'll happen to somebody else, right?
Yes.
Until it happens to you or a loved one, and you realize how important it is. It's like my dad's wife Bonnie. She made a very valid comment recently. She said, "You don't need insurance until you need it," and then in that moment you realize
it's too late
how critical it is, and you're like, "Shit, why did I do this? How did I?
Yes.
I really screwed this one up, didn't I?" So
yes, exactly.
And so you're saying that EXP has presumably like different levels that the individual agent can choose from?
Yes. So because they are a cloud-based brokerage, it's not like some of the companies that are different market centers where you've got a pool of 400, 500 agents. We have 90,000 agents. And so just like a big corporation, you get the benefits of having 90,000 agents. So you have significantly discounted insurance, and it's actually fantastic insurance. So my husband, as I said, he works for Bank of America. I'm on EXP's insurance, not my husband's, because it's so good. I was actually
just to put it into context for us, Allison, what's a premium like in EXP's insurance?
So for me, I think my current one is like $522 a month. I have a very, very low deductible coverage, and I have very high coverage. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune last year, and so I have to do biweekly infusions, and those would cost me $16,000 a pop. My insurance covers them.
$16,000 a pop
per infusion.
Infusion.
Correct.
I thought you were going to say $16,000 a year, and I was like, oh man, that's tough. But you're saying $16,000 every 2 weeks. That's $32,000 a month.
A month.
We're talking about $400,000 a year.
Correct. So you can see why I'm like, health insurance is very, and I believed in it well before then. This just reaffirmed this is why you need it. I was otherwise a very healthy 38-year-old, 39-year-old. And, I just kept getting these chronic sinus infections. And I finally went to the doctor, and they were like, yeah, this isn't actually a sinus infection. We're not sure what's going on. I was lucky. We did some blood work and they figured it out right away. And so I was diagnosed with common variable immune deficiency last October. And in November, I had to start on these infusions. And knock on wood, it's been fantastic, and it's turning things around, and my health has been wonderful, and I haven't missed a beat with work. But again, the power of team, when all this was going on, they stepped in and covered, and no one even noticed I was gone. So that was huge. But having the insurance, that's critical. Because I don't know about you, but I don't have an extra $32,000 a month laying around that I just basically want to like feed into my body. I could think of a lot of other things I'd rather do with that. But yeah, so insurance, that's huge. So that coverage is big. And then my other big reason was retirement. So having stock equity at a discount and being able to set that up as retirement accounts. So I train all of my agents. I do a lot of financial education with them. it's really, really important to me. One of the things that I realized as I spent more and more time in this industry is I've never been to a retirement party for a realtor,
Huh.
right? And I'm
Yeah.
looking around the office and I'm like, wow, no offense. If you love this still, great. If you are legitimately choosing every day to wake up and come in and keep selling houses, good for you. But I don't want to be 70 years old and still living paycheck to paycheck because I don't have a retirement, right? And these are some of the things that when we talk about running a business, in a lot of businesses, right, I started as a W 2 salaried employee. This stuff was provided for me. So I was used to having that there. And then when I started on my own, I realized, well, if I don't set aside and create this for myself, it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
So how do I break that cycle and change that? And so that's one of the big things that I train a lot of my agents on is we're going to sit down and we're going to talk financial literacy. And I want to figure out where your baseline is, and then we're going to raise that because
Yeah.
I want to make sure that you are set up so that you are working at this job because it's a choice, not because you have to. And I think the benefit of that is obviously very clear for the agent themselves, but also to the clients. When you're in a financially stable position, you're making better choices for your clients. Because if you've got to finagle some things with your commission to make this work, and you've got the ability to do that, you're going to. If you're literally desperate for every dollar that's coming in from there, you're not going to make those same decisions.
Yeah. No, these are excellent points. And so, do you bring in a financial advisor, or you just kind of focus on the education aspect and kind of leave
So
it to
a
figure
little
things
bit of
out?
both. This is where my husband comes in. So
Yep.
he's certainly, a lot of times people are a little scared of financial advisors and they're like, I don't have any money. They're not going to work with me. We have some incredible financial advisor partners that they get it. And they're like, hey, we don't care if you have nothing. We know you'll have something one day because we're going to sit down and have these conversations now and help you get there. And so we have financial advisors that come in. We actually do a quarterly Zoom series that we invite all of our clients to participate in and bring their friends as well. Our next one's April 25th, and I'm very excited for this one because it's on financial literacy, and we're actually asking them to bring their kids because I'm like, your high schoolers should know what they're up against. They need to start thinking about this stuff now. And so we'll have those partnerships. My husband is a great resource. So if one of my agents has a question about something, they know they can call him and he'll take as much time as they need to walk them through it and explain to them as best they can. What does that actually mean? I think one of the things, whether it's a realtor, a financial advisor, whatever the profession, we get so comfortable speaking in our own language and speaking with our own slang almost that sometimes we forget to stop. And with financial advisors, it's an overwhelming topic for a lot of people to begin with. So then they feel a little anxious to stop and say, okay, well, what does that actually mean, right? What is EBITDA? How do I break that down? Can you explain that? So Charlie's a little bit less intimidating for them because they know, he's a great guy and he loves
And
doing this. So
he's
he's
part of
happy
the
to do
family,
that.
literally,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we
So
do that. I
coming
do
from
a
the
lot of
same
books.
he's coming from the same position that you are, which is one
Yes.
of education leading to empowerment, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really important. You know, for me, the whole real estate journey has just been a really incredible and empowering one. And given my background with fundraising and in education, it was really important to me, and it remains important to me to do as much educating as I can. I always tell people I'm an open book. You can ask me anything about my business and how I run it. I come from a very abundant mindset, and I'm like, even my absolute best year I've ever had yet, I did less than 1% of the sales in Charlotte, right? And I felt like I had plenty of business that year. So there is more than enough to go around for everybody. So I'm like, let's just all work together. Let's openly share and collaborate, and let's help build something better.
Yeah. Well, and that's really common among the people at EXP that I know, from you
Yeah.
to Kyle Whistle and Dan Beer and
Yeah.
a
Kyle's a
number of
great guy.
others. I mean, they're always open and happy to share, and I think that that's really part
Yeah.
of the culture at EXP, right?
Yeah. I agree with that. And it's ultimately one of the things I would say the health insurance and the retirement aspects were what ultimately brought me here. That and the fact that I can come run my business and it's a platform. It's not someone telling me what to do all the time. My husband will tell you I'm the worst employee ever. I'm not good at taking orders. Um, but so it's like I love that aspect, but I do love the collaboration, and it gives me the opportunity to not be the biggest fish in the pond. I always tell my girls, I'm like, I want to be the dumbest person in that room because I want to be able to learn as much as I can, because the day that I stop learning is the day that I've died.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
Be the
I
sponge,
just
right?
love that. Exactly.
Yeah. And so I assume you're still in production.
I am. Yeah. I've dialed back significantly. I hit 100 million a few years ago and it almost broke me.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I was like, okay, this is too much.
Mhm.
And so at this point, I've started shifting a lot of my business over to the team, and just focusing more on the training, the coaching, being able to do incredible opportunities like this and being part of your show, Josh. And just trying to kind of take that next step. We're building out a new program, an offshoot of Lodestone called Reside, where I'm actually consulting other agents who've been very successful. I'm working with an agent right now. He's a 40 million plus producer. He knows what he's doing to sell. He doesn't have the foundation in how to set up a business. And again, with my whole mantra of education and just leaving this industry better than when I got into it, I'm like, if I can help him set up and get a business going that's going to be financially sustainable and
Mhm.
allow him to actually retire, then that's a win for me. So I'm doing a lot of consulting with top producers who need some help getting those fundamentals set together for their businesses.
Yeah.
And then we're taking some of the Lodestone materials and actually making those available to agents who aren't on the team so that we can kind of give them the quick and easy to get started. And it comes with a little video of me walking them through, here's kind of my best practices.
Yeah.
The more great agents that we can create to work with, the better.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're following in the steps of Marissa in a way.
A little bit. I'd say we've always run in tandem with each other. The big difference in shifting is she's a phenomenal coach and trainer for wide groups of agents. I prefer to be a lot of one-on-one.
Mhm.
And so while she does her one-on-one coaching, Marissa is very magnetic and she can command a room, and the agents love working with her. And for me, I will speak to a room, but I love that day on day, really diving in and saying, okay, Josh, let's go through what your individual problems are and let's figure out those solutions. And then let me help you work towards implementing those and getting them going. And so for me, I'm going to focus on kind of a smaller group setting than necessarily going to the masses.
Right. So it's a custom tailored solution. It's not sort of a one size
Exactly.
fits all. It's more
Yeah.
about listening, learning, and helping the
Yes.
agent grow and get to the next level.
Yes, and more focused on kind of the financials and the foundation of the business than, uh, you know, I don't need to teach you how to fill out a contract. You have a broker in charge for that, and they're phenomenal at it, right?
Yeah.
Go use them. That's not my highest and best use. Now, if you want some help learning how to negotiate in a transaction, absolutely, right? But that's where I'm like, hey, Marissa's got that platform to get you started. Here's her training, here's her coaching, go do that, right? And then you've gotten started. Now I'm going to help you get to that next level, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about those business fundamentals. I know a lot of agents that spend a lot of money on lead gen and all these other things. And it's always like, right, we say death by 1,000 paper cuts. And it's like $100 here, $100 there. And all of a sudden, I'm like, you've got over $10,000 a month going out. What do you have coming in? Right. So
Right.
those kind of things.
Yeah. No, these things add up very quickly with the,
Yes.
$10, $20 here, there. Oh, let's just do
Mm-hmm.
$20 for this and $10 for that. And next thing you know, it gets out of control. It not
Yes.
only is it inefficient, but when you actually step back and look at the spend, you'll notice that there's a fair amount of redundancy as well.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
So, Allison, I always like to wrap up with two questions. One is, what is
Mhm.
your most memorable transaction and why?
Hmm. I would say my most memorable transaction is honestly probably the very first one that I closed. Um, I think I made $500 off of it. It was a $50,000 sale. The client, his parents had passed away. It was an estate sale. He lived out of town. It was the first listing I ever had. And I literally had to break into the property because the keys that he mailed me didn't work. And he was like, well, these are the only ones I have. So just go ahead and break in. And I'm like, it's my first listing and I'm physically breaking into the house. Someone's going to call the cops. This is going to be terrible. Like, and I just remember as I'm climbing through that window and a good buddy of mine, Andy Griesinger, he's there like watching for me and helping me out. And I was like, okay, this is the kind of collaboration I'm looking for, first of all. So, all right, that's a win. But is this really what real estate's like? Am I going to be breaking into the homes to get them sold? And then when I got on the other side and I saw the condition of that house, I just remember looking at him, and the two of us had started together and we're like, is this really what we are in for? Okay. But what was even more memorable about that was there were a lot of issues that went wrong with title and everything else, but I just kept telling my client, we will work through this. We will work through this. And I had an incredible closing attorney, Greg Kunkelman. And Greg just every step of the way, here's what's happening. Here's why. This is the time it's going to take. And we just kept working through it. And I kept communicating with the buyer and letting them know, here's, and it took a long time. We got it closed. The client was able to have closure on that piece of his life. And I thought, this was a terrible transaction. It went horribly. And I will never forget the day of closing, calling him and just letting him know we're done, it's recorded, etc. And he was like, thank you for making this an incredible relief for me. He was like, this is a really stressful period in my life. And, it's really difficult for me knowing that my parents are gone now. And he's like, you just went above and beyond and made this happen. And he's like, and I know you didn't make much money off of this. So if this is what you're prepared to do for that, I can only imagine where you're going to go. And so that just kind of really stuck with me.
It ties back into, the character of the agent and, who you truly are and sort of the fabric of your personality and where our priorities lie and what's most important. And so, your priority was not on, making your year out of this transaction. Your priority was in doing the right thing for your client and their family and treating them as you would want to be treated, which is really sort of one of the tenets that my entire life is based on, right?
Yep.
It's not about the people. It's not about the money that they have. It's not about, their religion, the color of their skin, their sexual orientation. It's really just about helping people. And you'll notice that the more that you help people and the more that you stop and say, hey, that person over there looks like they could use my help.
Yes.
That the more likely it is that the universe is going to provide you with the help that you need when you need it. And, just like insurance, you don't know when you're going to need that help. And so, sure. I mean, you speak to people like Levi Rogers in San Antonio and how he got started and selling mobile homes, right? He's not making a killing, right? But he just got to start by helping people, right?
Exactly.
God helped Levi, and he helped him by surviving. Literally, his life was on the line and he survived. And next thing you know, he pays it forward and he pours himself into others, just like you did by breaking into the house. And while I'm sure you agree with me in saying we don't recommend breaking into listings.
No, but definitely not.
Depending
even
on
with your client's permission.
Right.
Yeah.
It's borderline, right? There's some gray area there. If somebody saw you doing it, there was a chance that they might have called the police.
And have a nice, friendly conversation with CMPD and be like, I promise I'm really nice. And my client's here. And they told me I could. And they're like, yeah, okay, lady. Back of the car. Let's go. Yes.
My point is, you did what was needed and you went above and beyond to get the job done. And it's remarkable. Tell us a little bit about your involvement with the local charities, Change Please, Dilworth Soup Kitchen. What's that about?
So for me, my family, has always been big about helping people out. My mother did a lot of philanthropic volunteering when we were younger. And so we watched her and we learned from her. And it was always a big part of my life. It's how I got into fundraising for private schools. I was very fortunate. I was a recipient of financial aid in high school. Our public schools were not the greatest, and my parents really put a strong emphasis in education. And so my sister and I had the incredible opportunity to go to a private school, and it was life-changing. And because of the kindness of others, we were able to have that opportunity. Um, for me, I got into the schools and fundraising to be able to provide that opportunity for other children as well. I think opportunity and education makes all the difference in the world of where you can go and what you can do with it. So when I got started in real estate, as I said, I went heads down pretty hard, and I wasn't really looking up. And I woke up a few years ago and I said, there's something missing in my life. And I have this incredible family and I have these incredible friends and I've got this incredible business, but I'm not giving back like I used to. And it feels wrong. And so, my husband and we have flipped a few properties in Charlotte and we now live in the Dilworth neighborhood. And I drive by the soup kitchen every day on my way to the office. And they do an incredible job. The volunteers come in, whether it's donating their time, the food, supporting a lot of our community. And so I was like, okay, these are my neighbors, right? If I can't take the time to stop and support this, then what's wrong with me? And so that's become kind of a big piece of my personal philanthropic efforts. The other aspect of it is Change Please Coffee. I run an all-female team. And COVID hit really hard in a way that I didn't expect, in that not just for my team, but a lot of the women, I went to Vanderbilt University. There are some very successful women that I graduated with, and I saw them dropping out of the workforce left and right because someone had to stay home and school the kids. And I remember feeling so frustrated and so helpless because I was like, this isn't what they want. I'm having these conversations with them and this isn't actually what they want, but they feel like this is the only option right now. And why is that the case? And so on my own team, the women who are mothers, I was like, listen, we're going to do whatever it takes to cover for each other and figure this out. And I don't care how long this thing lasts. Like, we're going to figure it out. And we're just going to pivot and we're going to support one another. So you can be there for your kids. And then we're still going to keep this business growing. And I'm going to make sure you're still getting your paychecks. Right. And so for me, that was my personal effort with my team. But then one of the agents brought to me, so for several years, we've always donated a portion of every sale to a different local philanthropy. And she said, there's this new coffee shop opening up. It's called Change Please. And they train they train women who are survivors of domestic violence and sex trafficking, which is a huge issue in Charlotte, unfortunately. And they train them as baristas, they guarantee them job placement, and they get double the minimum wage. Wow. And she was like, this is an incredible organization. Is this something the team would want to get behind? And I said, I'd love to learn more about it. So I had the opportunity to sit down with Ryan McMillan, who, if you want to talk about, you look up the word powerhouse in a dictionary and that man's picture is there. He has so much energy. I don't know when he sleeps. I am actually convinced he doesn't. And he just, it's never enough for him. Like, he just has to keep pouring back into people constantly. And Ryan was so excited about this. They've been around in the UK. They're in several different countries, but Charlotte was their first market to launch in the US. And he's like, I am determined to make this successful. They're actually in New York now. So I strongly suggest the next time you're going to get a cup of coffee, have your meeting at Change Please, because every cup of coffee that you buy, the proceeds go back to the organization. As someone who's in finance and fundraising, the financials for their company, their ROI is unbelievable. So that's something that's really important. But it also allows us as women to support other women in our community and give them the same opportunity that we have, which is to go out and make a living and not be stuck in terrible situations. Unfortunately, even in 2024, there are still a lot of obstacles out there for women to come over, and I don't want to be a part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution. So we started supporting Change Please last year, and we've decided to just continue with them. So a portion of every sale goes towards them, and we absolutely love them and what they're doing.
Wow, that's great. Fantastic work. So, Alison, this has been fantastic. You continue to pour into others as you have done, not just in real estate, but also with independent schools and your development work, pouring into them and the student body. So I think that Charlotte as a whole is lucky to have you.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that you're going to continue to absolutely have tremendous success in everything you do. So it's no wonder that you've gone from 0 to 100 and been ranked the number one agent for sides in your market. So thank you so much for joining us on the Rubin Special today. It's a remarkable story of triumph, mindset, and perseverance. So thank you again for joining us today. It's been really wonderful getting to know you.
Thank you for having me, Josh. I really, really appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the opportunity that Charlotte's given me. We're looking forward to what's coming next for Lodestone and myself.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon, Alison.
All right. Thanks, Josh.
Hi, it's Josh Rubin with the Rubin team.